Business leaders in London have welcomed a decision which will continue to make it easier for Chinese visitors to come to the UK. A new streamlined visa service launched last year will now be extended. The announcement was made to coincide with the start of a 4-day visit by China's Prime Minister. Let's get more on this from Alex Bushhill, who's in the West End for us tonight. Alex.
Well, Riz, the West End relies on shopping, the shops rely on tourists, and the tourists that spend the most, well, they are the Chinese, spending a staggering £500 million in Britain last year alone. What's really interesting, though, is that is a fraction of the amount of money that could be spent, the amount of Chinese tourists who could come here. Paris attracts 4 times as many Chinese tourists than we do here in London. And that's why tonight, on the night that the Chinese Premier arrives in London for a state visit, the government have announced an overhaul, a shake-up of how Chinese go about getting visas to Britain.
Pomp, pageantry and paying tourists. Outside Buckingham Palace today, European, American and Indian visitors all taking selfies, but only a handful of Chinese, and most of them from Hong Kong. Like Ivy and her family.
St. James Palace
As the city used to be British, they have UK passports and don't need a visa. So where does mainland China holiday and why?
The shops in Paris, because they are very famous, more than in London.
In fact, I have been to France more than 20 times, but this is my first time to the UK. For France, I get a visa in 2 days. For the UK, I get a visa normally in 15 days.
That's why new figures show 90% of Chinese tour groups to Europe miss out on the UK altogether. But 71% say they will now put the UK on their itineraries if visa applications are simplified, which is exactly what's happening. The government has already spent millions promoting tourism in China, and now a 24-hour visa service will be launched. And a pilot scheme that combines applications for European and British visas into one is also to be rolled out. London tour operators are delighted.
Instead of having to do 2 separate forms to make 2 separate visits to 2 different passport offices, we can order that in one-stop shop now, which is fantastic news.
Retailers are pleased too. Chinese visitors spend 3 times more than the average tourist. That's why they also want to change that perception that London has the history, Paris the shops.
The Chinese have a little bit of an old-fashioned view, many of them, of the UK, thinking of London as the city of fog, rather going back to the 1950s, and thinking of Paris as the city of light. And that came out in some of our research that we did.
But rather than doing even more to market, to lure, to favour Chinese money, others warn this is a blatant double standard, and it's not without its risks. The risk of illegal immigration.
Ultimately, the moment somebody crosses a border, there's always a risk of overstaying. The efficiency with which that risk is diminished depends on the quality of the border service.
For those who make their money from tourism, those concerns are exaggerated, and what was a cumbersome visa process is now in step with the rest of Europe. So today, they're celebrating.
And there's more. Any visitor from China to Ireland will be able to come here to London on the same visa. 12 new UK passport centres will be opened up in mainland China as well, more than any other country. That's why it may have taken years in the coming, but tourism bosses tell me it's a question of better late than never. Riz.
Alex, many thanks.